Hello again and welcome back to Chicago Crossing Model Railroad. Eric here with you today for a review of the newly released ScaleTrains EMD SD40-2. And today on the review we'll be taking a look at the detail and performance of this particular model, and we'll also compare it with a few of the other SD40-2s out there. That seems to be one of the most popular models for different manufacturers. So in addition, I've also got this Kato SD40-2 model. This also has DCC sound, and in addition, the Broadway Limited SD40-2, and I think Intermountain makes these as well. It seems like everybody wants to make an SD40-2, so gives us a lot of good opportunity to compare the ScaleTrains model with everything else that's out there. This retails with DCC sound for $249.99. You can pick it up without sound for something like $149. I don't know whether that's just DCC ready. Very likely is the case. In any case, makes it reasonably affordable if you don't need all the whistles and bells, literally. So let's go ahead and unbox this model. So as you can see, we have pretty nice packaging here with the details of a, looks like a Gevo on there. I'm surprised this box didn't burst into flames when it hit my house. We're an Electromotive house here. Anyway. Let's go ahead and get this thing open up. And so we've got a couple different items in here. We have a little bit of a manual. The manual contains just kind of the typical stuff: overall features, introduction, prototype info. You've got all of your sound slots, volume CVs, control information for what does what. That's all great. Dimmer for headlights, that's actually kind of cool, so you can program in whatever you need. And programming notes, etc. Great. Always glad to see something a little bit more comprehensive in there. And so you can see the locomotive right here. You know, as always, it's a nice presentation when you can actually see the thing up front. It looks like it's packed in one of these plastic clamshells, which again is sort of a rarity for N-scale models. Usually they just come in a jewel case. So this looks a little bit more HO. Okay, so here is our model. We'll set the box aside. And if we pop the top on this, open it up, we've got a little bits of foam on the side over here in order to protect the top, which I'm sure has quite a few fragile details. And we've got a little piece of plastic there, and a little piece of plastic on the bottom as well. And then we've got foam bits on the sides to basically provide a solid surface with these handrails, which look quite fine. They are plastic and bendable, so obviously you want to be a little bit careful with them. Yep, there we go. Just tip the damn thing over, that'll work. All right, and here is our ScaleTrains SD40. There we go. So this weighs in at about 2.9 ounces. And we'll compare that with some of the other models that we've got over here to see how that might impact things like tractive effort. But in any case, let's have a closer up look at the details on this particular model. So we'll start up here at the front. One thing, again, as you would expect with a rivet counter line, is you've got separately installed grab irons where you don't necessarily have to install those yourself. Nice crisp paintwork up front. You can see the MU hoses and cable connection. You can also see the cut lever. That's all been picked out. in white paint, as well as the white highlight paint on the side rails to climb up and on the stairs themselves. So nice bit of detail there. As you can see, you do have the separately fitted mirrors or windscreens and sunshade on there. You've got a firecracker antenna on top. The horns are located in what would be a prototypical location for the model, and you do have a very nice looking beacon. Only shame is that this beacon doesn't work. I kind of wonder whether the chip inside has a pad, so if you wanted to put a nano LED up there and actually get that thing to blink, whether you could do so. You have, some nicely detailed prototypical headlights up there. You've got number boards as well, and you've even got separately fitted windshield wipers, which is, quite a tiny little detail part, because we are, seriously talking N-scale here. If we come over to the side, we can see there's, colored, painted in and picked out fuel fill ports. There's the emergency fuel cutoff switch there. We've got some very, very tiny detailed writings, which I'm sure are legible, but God forbid if I could read that right now. I can't. You've got a small portal there to be able to see some kind of meter inside of the access doors. And then on the rear side, once again, you've got some nicely picked out details here, including some of the lights both on the top and the lights on the sides there. You've also got MU hoses and air hose picked out and set nicely apart. If we flip over to the other side, a lot of the same details here. As you can tell, you've got a fitted brake wheel up at the front and a lot of the same stuff. Generally speaking, it looks like all the hinges and details on these access doors are nicely done. When we turn over to the top, this is where things look particularly nice. And I remember seeing this at a train show, one of the prototype models at a train show, and I was always very impressed when you see these laser cut metal details with the actual fans underneath. Even the exhaust port over here is actually a laser cut detail that is not just molded plastic, because you can see a red wire under there. So maybe that's not prototypical, but the fact that you do have that fine detail is certainly nice. So altogether, looking pretty good. The trucks, as you can see, have good detail on them. You can see quite a few little bits and bobs there. You even have a chain up there that is molded plastic. It's not a real chain. My one big gripe about the way that this looks is you can see the pickups behind there, and that is one of the least prototypical features I could imagine. This is actually a bit of a surprise to me, because when you look at this thing straight on, and most people would want to, you can actually see, and I'll just kind of bring the light down here so it becomes a little more apparent if you're looking at this on a layout. You can actually see those pickups. The real model or the real thing would never look like that. And you've got couplers here. These actually are not the dreaded ScaleTrains couplers. It looks like these are actually just sort of MTLs that are painted in the rust color, so it looks a little bit more like a typical draw gear on a locomotive. So altogether, my general sense of this model is it's beautifully detailed. As always, it essentially takes what's becoming more and more common on HO locomotives and puts them onto an N-scale, with you having to do none of the work. But, frankly, the way that the trucks are assembled and the way that you can see these this pickup gear underneath there is really kind of disappointing. All right, welcome back to the layout. We've got the SD40 on the track, and, looks pretty good on there. Okay, let's go ahead and power it up, so F8. And so, yeah, you can see the number boards light up at that point, and you get a startup sequence. Let's turn on the headlight. Looking good, sort of a warm white LED. All right, let us go ahead and try a couple of the basic sound features here. Here's the horn. Loud, a little bit tinny, but whatever, it's N-scale. But I feel like I do, I think the Broadway Limited might have a more robust horn. There you can hear other things kicking in. Pretty clear bell. That all sounds good. Let's power it down again. Always easier to narrate when there's not a bunch of train noise. Of course, all the volume components of this are adjustable, so you can more or less treat this, as they say in the manual, like a mixing console, and you can turn things up and down as you so choose. Okay, let's do a little bit of a run test here. So again, this is not a run-in model, so we're getting essentially a new untested motor directly out of the box. But as always, first question is, do we have a working locomotive? I'm going to power this up. And this is basically sitting at number 1 on my controller. It's basically an NC power cab, as you can see here. And with number 1, I'm actually getting a reasonable crawl. You do see a little bit of cogging, so but hey, directly out of the box, that's actually a pretty nice crawl. Let's go ahead and put this in reverse and see what happens here. And then that way you can see it go the other way, see if it does equally well. In an N-scale model, something like that is always pretty commendable to see. You do want to be able to run locomotives at scale speeds and things like that. This is obviously running as light power, so there's no load on it, but nonetheless, not too bad. As you can see, it is not absolutely smooth, but it's almost smooth enough to where you would kind of say, got to be a good 5-pole motor in there with skew windings so that it's able to catch each of the additional poles as they come through. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. We'll go ahead and kind of back this up a little bit more. We'll turn on the sound and we'll see how the throttle up actually works. I'll keep it in frame for you just so you can actually see what's happening here. Change the direction to forward there to get the forward headlight. And that's always nice. You get the brake squeal automatically in there. I do like that about these more modern ESU Loc sound decoders. Put it in reverse, same deal. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and do a running session. I'm first going to run in the loco, so we'll do about 20-30 minutes both ways, and then come back and revisit its performance, hook it up to some trains, and just see how it does. All right, here we are taking a look at how the SD40-2 is running on the layout. Again, this is full run-in, but at least as a sense of how this thing is doing more or less straight out of the box. Looks pretty good. No derailments on the first lap. It's doing fine over the turnouts. Running is smooth. My track is reasonably clean right now, but I certainly didn't go through any effort to check it before putting the loco on, so you're literally just seeing it running on probably your average track as well. And so far so good with it. Well, up next I thought it might be a good idea to do kind of a side-to-side comparison between a couple of the other SD40-2 variants that are out there from other manufacturers. So here what you see, road number 7036 is a Kato model, and 7041 is, of course, our ScaleTrains model. So I'm just going to pull this one off the track really quickly to show you a couple of the key points regarding this Kato model. First off, if you look at the track or at the trucks, what you notice is you can't actually see the pickups based on this mechanism. So the pickups here are perfectly capable of providing the power enough to run both the DCC functions of this locomotive as well as the sound. That doesn't seem to be an issue with this. This is actually quite reliable. In terms of detail, of course, it has all molded grab irons and things like that. That's certainly to be expected at the price point for that Kato model. And I'll simply say to you that one runs absolutely phenomenally well. So next, let's do a little comparison of the sound between these different models. What you're listening to right now is Locomotive 7041, so that is the ScaleTrains model. And we'll just do a couple of quick sounds here to have a sound check. This is the horn and the bell, as you can hear it there. And you can hear other elements kicking in, dynamic brake fans, etc. So we'll go ahead and power that down. And then we'll turn on 7036 next. So this is the Kato with essentially the same system installed. So let's power that one up. And a couple of thoughts here. Number one is 7036's sound is less tinny. You can actually hear it almost. It almost seems slightly muffled, but at the same time, it seems bright enough to be credible. Here's the horn and the bell. Generally speaking, I actually prefer what I'm hearing out of 7036. The higher frequency kind of whine that comes out of 7041, I feel like it could get a little bit tiresome. So anyway, I'll push 7036 back. 7036, by the way, also has working ditch lights, which is simply a feature of probably the era in which that is being modeled. And then showing over here, this is a Milwaukee Road SD40-2 from Broadway Limited, and this one has the Paragon 4 Rolling Thunder sound chip in it. What that also means is I believe that is a speaker manifold down at the bottom of the fuel tank, so I think this has a little bit better sound potentially. In terms of detail, these Broadway Limiteds are always kind of the intermediary between something like Kato and something like ScaleTrains. There are actually grab irons installed on the front, but only on the front. You do have a little bit finer railing, and details are generally good. Although the upstairs vent fans are never particularly amazing on anything that's molded plastic. So ScaleTrains will always kind of win in that regard. And in this case, it doesn't. If it plays a startup, I don't really know how to get it there. But anyway, that's the overall sound of the thing. I'd say that's probably pretty good. Horn is pretty nice too. It's got a certain processing on it for fake echo. And there's the bell. Okay, so next up, let's see how this actually performs with a load, and also to check how the couplings actually work in this case. So what I've set up, I'll just kind of pan the camera. I've put together a 4-car local train that's about the length of any train that runs on Chicago Crossing. And so with that in mind, now what we're going to do is we're basically just going to see how these get along and see whether we can get a coupling at prototypical speeds or not. With a single car, I imagine the weight of the models is such that the locomotive will just push those in any case. There is actually a certain amount of friction that has to be overcome for these couplings to work at this size. So instead, with a 4-car train, I think it's a little bit more of a fair test of how these things will couple together, because you've got a little bit of inertia behind the rail cars themselves. So let's see what happens here. And again, it's always a challenge, I think, in N-scale just to get a slow-speed coupling, but we've done it, and that actually worked great. So let's go ahead and get this thing moving forward, and we'll see how everything works with a train behind it. So my general opinion of this model, it's really nice quality in terms of the level of detail that you get on the locomotive. Sound perhaps a bit on the tinny side, and those brass pickups under the trucks I find to be a little bit of an annoyance. They are actually quite visible if you're looking at eye level and watching the locomotive pass you. So with all that in mind, thanks for watching, and see you next time on Chicago Crossing Model Railroad.